Orem's facing incredible growth. Give us a sense of the issues that you think are critical and how you plan on addressing those issues. And I believe, Hans is first, right? We randomly drew, I believe.
Yes.
You need to go full first here. How are you dealing with the issues of growth in Orem? How do you plan to deal with the issues of growth in Orem?
Well, I grew up here in Orem. I moved here when I was 10 years old. I've been here almost my whole life. A couple of years on a mission, a couple of years in Arizona. I've seen this growth, but if you check the statistical abstract, you'll see that Orem, in the last 9 years, has grown 6,000 people. And 60% of that is babies, homegrown babies. And so I've heard about this fantastic growth that's coming, and it's nice to talk about, and it's also being used as an excuse to raise taxes on those who already live here, raise utility fees on people who already live here. I don't think it's going to happen. If you guys drive down here into Vineyard, you'll see hundreds of homes going up right now. Most people I know do not want to live in the apartments that the city council is talking about building, 9,400 new apartments. I don't think that's going to happen. It could if you pass out enough subsidies to them like they did them all. Thank you.
Orem is a great place to live. We have growth going on because of our families. 70% of our growth comes due to our families. The others are in migration. The ways that we need to look at, the things that we need to solve are traffic and congestion. Some of the ways that we're looking at that is to restripe some of the roads, to set up where some of the people travel on other roads parallel to some of the main roads. We're also looking at mass transit. Those are areas that are important. We're looking at timing of lights. We're doing traffic studies. So we as a city are actively pursuing that and looking at ways to make that work. Housing is another issue. Certainly we have more apartments now than we have had in the past. But one thing I'd like to let you know is that when I became mayor in February of 2014, I requested that we pass a law to prohibit any more changes of zones, of regular zones to PD zones along State Street, the major thoroughfares. That passed, and that has slowed the apartment building down.
Thank you. So related to that, and we'll start with the mayor this time, how do you deal with all these housing needs of the population as it's growing? What are some of the solutions you see?
Well, certainly we need to understand that our population for the future is not the same as it is right now. We have millennials that like living in apartments and renting them. We actually have a lot of seniors. Over at the mall, those apartments are 90% filled, 30% by seniors, 30% by millennials, and 30% by families with young children. So the housing mix is changing. You need to realize what the job growth is. The job growth nationwide is 1.5%. Utah's 2.5%, and Utah County is 5.5%. With all of those jobs and with all of our kids, we are naturally growing. But again, housing, looking at balancing that along major thoroughfares and not in the bedroom part of the community as far as any apartments or condos go, and looking at traffic and dealing with the traffic congestion are things we're actively pursuing and doing, and I think we're finding a mix that will work.
Well, I'll just say again, I doubt this housing is going to happen unless you subsidize it. It's not going to happen. The reason more and more people are going down to Vineyard, not such a growing place, is they don't have to buy a home this size. They don't have to move here. They'll go somewhere else unless you want to subsidize it, make it more valuable. The mayor mentioned they voted for a moratorium. What he didn't tell you is he also voted for 9,400 apartments in addition to 1,500 at the mall. About 480 that are already under construction. These are the targets where they plan on putting them in. The first one has 1,352 new units, 800 north, 2,368 units. Center Street, 1,700, 800 south, 2,394 units. University Parkway, 1,583. So when they tell you they voted for a moratorium, they voted for a moratorium for here, and here, and here. They didn't tell you they voted for 9,400 already approved apartments as part of their master plan. So don't buy the moratorium thing. They voted for this.
So So one of the questions from the audience, and the person put her name Carol Walker, so Carol, thanks. I appreciate the momentum the city is going. I am assuming you as mayor and council will continue that direction. So can you comment on the things that are happening now that you'd like to see continue?
Can I talk about things I don't want to see continue? That's why I'm running for office. One of the things that the city did was vote to raise your utility rates. The minimum increase was 37%, and then they have 4 tiers where they can run it even higher once you get over 10,000. Do you know what that money is being spent on? Do you know what that's being spent on? 9 years ago, Jerry Washburn dedicated a 10 million gallon tank. And he said this capacity should serve Orem indefinitely. There's no need for future capacity expansion. Now, what happened in the last 9 years where a population went up 6,000 people, 60, and the mayor says 70% of babies, what happened? That suddenly we have to raise everybody's utility bills astronomically. They say the state said they hadn't had to do it. They could have raised your utility rate in 2 blocks, 1 penny. They did not have to raise it 37%, 59%, and so forth.
So when I became mayor, the University Mall had 2 empty anchor stores out of 3, had 10 regular stores empty, and had 14 kiosks empty. We worked hard to get the mall going, and with a $500 million investment and a community development agreement through the city, we have $500 million going into that mall. You can see what's going on. Tremendous amount of activity and growth. There's a 2.5% or 2.5 times rate of that money flowing through the community. You can see that going throughout the community. Midtown Village was almost empty and vacant for 5 years. It's now redeveloped. We have 60 brand new businesses and restaurants inside our city. Trader Joe's wanted to come to Orem. Tucano's has come, 30% increase in sales. R.C. Willey, 30% increase in sales. One thing I'd like to mention with regards to the apartments, what Hans hasn't told you, is that he voted for 1,700 new apartments, 9 complexes. If you kept that rate going, it would be almost equal to what the State Street Master Plan talks about being a possible.
Sewer treatment plant, the smell capacity and of its drainage into Utah Lake. The sewer treatment plant plants.
Sure. So the sewer treatment plant, we have brought the water treatment plant up with a $10 million investment. We've got it higher on the phosphorus levels going into Utah Lake than is required by the state in their 2020 plan. So we feel like we're doing a good job. We're also investing in new water lines. We're investing in new meters. We're investing in new lines for fire protection. You need to keep the infrastructure up. We've spent almost $15 million in new infrastructure in the city in the last 4 years.
I wasn't aware we had a smell problem down there. Is that the truth? There's a smell problem?
What the questionnaire said.
Yeah.
Well, I don't live down there and I don't smell it. I've been down there 4 or 5 times and I didn't smell it, so maybe it's the wind's blowing the wrong direction when I'm down there. But I do know the city has been spending money on infrastructure. That $15 million was spent before they raised your utility rates. They do not need that new tank, which is $12 million, which is the biggest item. They're also already spending money on the sewer plant, which I think is fine. Everybody wants that. If we've got a smell problem, then I'll say, okay, let's go find out what's going wrong down there, because we've spent millions of dollars, millions, to try to make that place nice. And if it's got a smell problem, then we need to fix it. I wasn't aware there was one.
As the future mayor, what are your plans in supporting your local chamber? That was not a plan, by the way, so appreciate the question, but that was not a plan. What's your plans for supporting the local chamber?
Choose to whoever else.
Well, I'm probably 180 degrees opposite of the mayor of how to help the chamber. 2 or 3 years ago, when we were getting ready to come to the dinner for the mayor of Springville, Wilfred Clyde, we talked about you people asked us for another $5,000. And when it came time for me to vote on it, the mayor asked me, he said, I guess I know how you're going to vote. I said, yep, you're right. I'm going to vote against it. I don't want to give the chamber $1. They're a private organization. They should not have any city taxpayers' money. You're a private outfit. You ought to pay your own way. I thought it was interesting. I was the only one who voted against it, but that same week, it came out in the paper that your accountant had stolen over $200,000 out of your funds. And I thought, why is it the very week the chamber calls up and says, we want $5,000 out of you guys, we find out they just had $200,000 stolen. We should not be bailing out the chamber or any business.
So I'm proud as mayor of the Chamber of Commerce for Utah Valley. I think they're very effective and do a great job. I serve on the public policy committee with them. It's important, I think, that we as a business community come together and promote our area here within Utah County. One thing I was going to say in regards to the smell, there was a smell at the sewer treatment plant for a couple of months. We learned that there was a afterburner that had malfunctioned. We fixed that. We haven't had any complaints about smell for a long time. So I think it's important that we do invest in infrastructure and that we do stay ahead of where we're going. It's important that our children and our grandchildren have a wonderful community to live in, and I think that the chamber helps move forward the business community. One thing that's important to remember is if you have a strong economy, then you have a vibrant tax base. With a vibrant tax base, you're able to pay for the services, fire, police, roads, things that we need within our city to operate properly.
Yeah, I got to ask the question first. I'm sorry we don't have one mic. You can ask that too. What was the mall like 4 years ago?
So as I mentioned earlier, the mall had 2 of the anchor stores out of 3 empty, had 10 of the regular stores empty. They had a choice. They could either sell, they could either milk it, let it go down, or they could reinvest. So they chose to look at reinvesting in it as a legacy project. They have put in, with the use of a community development agreement, which is a post-performance tax incentive, they have put in $500 million, or they are putting in $500 million. That actually will produce revenues for the Alpine School District of double the amount had they not done that over a 40-year period. Interestingly, the governor wrote a letter in support of it. Ronna Ralph wrote a letter in support of it. Val Hale, head of GOED, wrote a letter in support of it. President Holland at UVU put his support, I put my support, and you just have to look around at this community to see what's going on, and you can see how well it's happening. I know there's a mall in Akron, Ohio, built same time, same size, called the, I won't mention what it's called, but anyway, that mall has gone out of business and is empty because they didn't reinvest. 25% of our sales tax revenue comes from that mall.
Yeah, having lived here, I watched the mall built, I watched it decline, and I watched it get a $58 million subsidy to try to resurrect it. If you look at the Republican Party platform and the Democratic Party platform for 2016, Bernie and Hillary said they were going to expand this infrastructure spending. The Republican Party said it's crony capitalism. That's what they call it, crony capitalism. And they said they're going to try and eliminate it. If you vote with the mayor and the incumbent, you're voting with Bernie and Hillary for crony capitalism. That's what they called it, crony capitalism, when you give special tax incentives, special tax breaks to businesses. And it's not fair. One of my favorite city councilmen was Harold B. Lee, who talked about it. He was a city councilman in Salt Lake. He said, I warn you that government subsidies are not the Lord's way. And I don't care if you put up a big sign that looks like it came right out of Las Vegas, it's still wrong.
UVU now has the highest student enrollment, and transportation traffic is crazy. What are you going to do to help out with transportation options in the area?
As I understand it, you already have people that are building down below, and they're required to provide bus traffic. bus transportation that comes up to the university. You have parking down there. Now, one thing that I'm opposed to is what the current council has voted for, another big $190 million public transit system, which, by the way, the Democrats say they wanted to expand. The Republicans said they were going to phase this out. But again, that's another Bernie Sanders city council group. Then you've got the Republican conservative over here. I like what BYU did. They didn't cost you anything. They set up a private system. A private system. All you have to do is have a BYU identification card, and you can get on their bus. They've got like 4-leaf clovers that go around the city all day picking up students, taking them home. They didn't ask for a government subsidy. They didn't ask for $190 million. They didn't ask the city to, well, enough.
A couple of things I want to bring up. Investing in infrastructure is not crony capitalism. That's necessary for our city to move forward, for our citizens to have a good city, for our children and our grandchildren, number one. Number two, the traffic over at UVU. One of the things that the chamber is looking at is an off-ramp on 800 South in Orem. UVU is putting in a brand new bridge, which I helped to sponsor and through Mountain Land Area Government, across from the west side over to the east side to bring students over there. We're looking at other ways to help control traffic and move forward. One thing I'd like to mention on the word subsidy. Subsidy actually means money or a grant given from a government to a company to keep their prices low. Subsidies are given for milk, wheat, soy, meat, things like that. A post-performance tax incentive is one that the company actually earns and pays, and then that money is being used for infrastructure for the future, and that will actually return double the amount of property tax to the Alpine School District over the next 40 years.
So while we're on UVU, another item that's come up is housing. How do you balance out the growth of UVU and the housing needs of the students as well as the residents that live in that vicinity and the impact it's having on their quality of life?
Sure. So first of all, UVU has 50% are part-time, 40% are married, 40% are over the age of 25. UVU is a special university in the fact that it has both vocational and regular university courses. And looking at how you deal with the housing, there is the Palos Verdes area over there that is next to Campus Drive. They are looking at a project. We have not seen it before the council yet. That's a project that might help with housing over there, but we'll have to see what it looks like. A lot of housing has been approved west of the freeway. And there's another project that's going to be going up there just north of University Parkway that you've not seen yet. I went to Matt Holland a year ago and said, listen, there's a piece of property that is west of the freeway and east of the railroad tracks that you're probably not even aware of. It's a large piece of property. I recommended that you look at purchasing that for additional student housing. We're doing everything we can to help and to manage that area.
One of the things that I've proposed is that this housing thing is what people are complaining the most about. Yeah, I voted for 1,700 apartments. I didn't vote for 12,000 though, like these guys did, if you want to start adding up numbers. But I tell you what my answer is, and I've said it again and again, the Orem City Council voted for a State Street Master Plan. I voted against it. I was the only one that said no. I'm the only one that said, let's not put BRT down here by 2025. It's in here. I'm the only one that said, no, let's not do these 9,400 apartments that you're talking about at these 5 different growth points that you like. What I want to do is let the citizens vote on this. You're going to change this whole city. You already have all these buses running around, most of them empty most of the time, and now you're going to put 200-seat buses running up and down. And you can put the 200 right out here on State Street. These guys voted to do it. And I want to let the citizens vote on that before it happens.
On that note, one of the major priority issues of the chamber has been helping with transportation needs if we just look at predicted growth for this community by 2040, we're going to need 34 lanes on I-15 to accommodate the traffic flow. So what are some of your thoughts, or how do we, within the city capability, deal with transportation in terms of large populations and the ability to move them around to facilitate commerce and quality of life?
Again, I want to let the citizens vote on this. Why is it that the city council thinks they're so smart that they can go and blow $190 million, force the county to borrow $65 million, get the federal government to borrow $75 million, and then give it to us to pay for our socialist programs? That's no good. Let's let the citizens vote on it before you tear this city up. Let's let them decide that. When I got on the city council, I was the first one in the city council from 2004 forward who said, this utopia thing is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Who did that? And we had unanimous votes from 2002 all the way up. Promote utopia, double the debt. And they hid it from the citizens because they borrowed enough money to make the payments. 2004, then 2008, they did the same thing again. They hid it from the taxpayers. A unanimous city council does not mean the smartest people in the city are looking out for you. Let's let the citizens vote.
So follow-up question, give you another minute again. Didn't address the question of transportation. How did you, utopia is a different subject we'll get into. Transportation, how do you solve the transportation needs of a growing valley?
Again, let the citizens vote on it. That's what I said before, you let the citizens vote on it. This city council was so smart that they voted to spend $190 million for the BRT coming up University Parkway. They claim they didn't, but they did. They also voted for it to come up by 2025 right down State Street. They voted for it. 5.37 miles, they voted for it. I want the citizens to vote on this stuff, not the city council. They blew it with utopia. They've blown it with the BRT. They've stuck us with a terrible mess. And when it starts coming down the University or down State Street, it's going to be an even bigger mess. You let the citizens vote on this before you start coming up with these transportation ideas. And you can also look at the Republican Party platform. It says phase it out. Phase it out. And if the citizens had a chance to vote on it, these guys spent $45,000 to stop you from voting on the BRT. $45,000 just to stop you. Why? Because they knew they'd going to lose if we voted on it.
Again, transportation congestion is one of the biggest items in the city. I refer back to what I said earlier, that we're doing traffic studies, we're looking at different ways to manage the traffic. With regards to mass transit, that's one of the many areas of ways to move people. 30% less wear on our University Parkway would occur. We would take a lot of cars off the road by traveling on the BRT. Interestingly enough, no lanes of traffic would be taken out. Landscaping would be redone. The interesting thing to look at is on the BRT in 2006, a quarter-cent sales tax was voted on by the public at a 69% approval rate, included the BRT in that. In 2008, we put in our master plan traffic program for the city that had many open houses. Did not have any objections to it at that time. In 2015, we revisited the traffic master plan, and again, we did not have anyone bring up objections or problems. The people have had the chance to participate in this. Thank you.
So in this discussion, can you outline for us your philosophies on the role of government? What's done by government versus what should be voted by the citizenry? How do we decide what they should be voting on, and where's that line of government involvement versus citizen involvement?
So we have a form of government where we elect representatives to make decisions for us. If our representatives have to go out and do a referendum on every financial decision, then they're not doing their fiduciary responsibility. Certainly I support referendums, but at the same time we need to let our elected officials go ahead and make decisions. We have many open hearings, many chances for the public to weigh in on things that we decide. It's important, I think, that we let our public officials actually go ahead and operate accordingly, and that we participate in the process.
That's a good question for me. I've helped run 5 referendums. The first one I did was to let the citizens vote on whether or not they wanted to raise property taxes to pay for the Utopia bond. 69% of citizens agreed with me when they were allowed to vote on it. Since then, the city staff and incumbents have gotten a lot better organized on how to stop referendums, on how to challenge them, keep the citizens from voting on it. That's what's happened. I've worked on 5 of them. One of them, that down the county, we tried to let the citizens vote on whether or not we were going to borrow $65 million. And we started getting signatures on an electronic file to keep track of them. And the pro-BRT people, the pro-UTA people, said, let's vote on the bond right now before they get enough signatures to figure out what's really going on in the city. So they went right to work on it. And they voted on it. Even though they weren't going to borrow the money for another year and a half, they said, let's vote for the bond right now. They're afraid to let these citizens vote, and that's why they do what they do.
Got a couple of questions here about issues that affect mobility and housing in terms of a good mix of wealthy and poor citizens in given areas. How do you preserve and promote economically diverse neighborhoods in the community?
If you get the big map of Orem, it shows you've got 12,000 square foot building lots, you've got 8,000 square foot building lots, and you see them scattered around the city. There's more of them in the northeast section, and you also have more people up there that vote, which helps explain distribution of parks and other stuff like that too. But we already have a pretty good distribution in this city. I think the past planners saw that. I think that people have mixed it up pretty good here in our city, and I like that. I like it. I grew up on a 15-acre farm. I'm in an area that has 8,000 square foot building lots as far as what the code is. But I don't have a problem with it. If you want to live in a bigger home, a more isolated section, 12,000 square foot lot, then let you do it. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's already happened. I'm not worried about figuring out how to force a redistribution. We're already the most built-out city in the state. I don't know how you're going to do it unless you're going to start tearing a bunch of them down.
So housing is not necessarily affordable for everyone, and the affordability level is changing. So one thing I would like to do is to encourage those that would like to buy a house to look in parts of our community that have homes built back in the 50s, the 40s, the 60s, and look at ways that they can refurbish those homes. I've met several millennials that have bought homes and they're actually refurbishing them and they're actually regenerating that neighborhood. So the older folks, their kids are gone, the older folks are dying off, and these millennials, these younger couples are fixing and working on those homes. We need to look at affordable housing. That's an area of great concern to me. We don't have a lot of areas of it, but we need to look at ways that we can encourage affordable housing. One thing my family and I have done is we've actually worked with Habitat for Humanity and gone out and actually physically built homes for those who can't afford them and help to get into them.
As of September of 2017, Utah County's welcomed a whopping 996 new businesses this year alone. The majority of those have been opened in Orem, actually, 182 of those. What will you do to support new businesses and the future ones to become successful in the community?
Certainly we want to work with the businesses that are in our community. We want to encourage them. We have many programs in economic development within the city. We have an economic development director, a website. We have programs. So there's a lot that we can do to help them. I'm encouraged by all those who want to come to Orem and start businesses. It's interesting, Tucano's moved up from Provo to the mall. R.C. Willey moved part of their operation up to the mall. Trader Joe's has come to the mall. We have the Asian market in Provo. They're moving up on State Street. We have a chiropractor who's putting in a brand new facility on State Street. And you can see the fact that the energy and the economy is growing with inside of Orem because of what we've been able to do with the mall, what we've been able to do with Midtown Village, what we've been able to do with economic development, and that's bringing a better and wider and deeper tax base that helps our community. It actually keeps your property taxes low, and we've not had to raise any property taxes.
I think one of the reasons we haven't had to is the last time they tried to do it, 69% agreed with me and stopped them. That's what's kept it down. As far as new businesses, I welcome new businesses. I think that's great. What I oppose is subsidized businesses. Now, if you read the State Street Master Plan, you'll see where they say they're going to take out 35% of the retail space up and down State Street. That's one of the things they plan on doing. They've also downgraded a lot of businesses. You won't see this being talked about until after the election, but they've got a list of about 50 types of businesses they're downgrading, which means you cannot improve that business because you're one of the undesirables. You can't improve your business more than 15%. I've got a good friend. He has a business down on the end of State Street. He had a sale lined up for his property, $2 million, until the buyer came to the city and found out they're in the process of downzoning that business down there, that business area down there. So he lost a $2 million sale. A lot more of that's going to happen after the election once they downzone a lot more of these businesses.
We can't seem to get off this topic. Two more questions will come in again on transportation. And again, specifically, the questions are related to if we don't support BRT, what are the solutions for transportation of the area? What do we put up to the votes of the citizen to vote for if that's our method of making decisions?
Well, they already fought you, so you could not vote on the BRT over here. They were so sure you were so smart, or not so smart, and they were so smart that they spent $45,000 of Orem City money to keep you from voting on the BRT coming up State Street, up University Parkway. That went through the court system, and then the judge held on to it for almost 60 days, so only had 3 days to appeal to the state Supreme Court. Kind of like a pocket veto. Again, I want the citizens to vote on this. I do not trust the city council's judgment. I trust the citizens who live here. That's who I trust. And if you've got a proposal you want to make that's going to affect the whole city, like 9,400 apartments, BRT going right down State Street, that to me is big enough. You let the citizens vote on it. And the other thing you need to realize, if you read the implementation plan, there's 3 pages of implementation plan, how they're going to do the State Street thing. 12 times CDAs are mentioned. They're going to pay for it by lowering the business subsidies and raising your taxes. So
again, I'll give you one more minute if you like, Mr. Andersen. The 4 questions have been, what are the solutions of transportation? Do you have specific solutions for transportation other than voting for BRT or not?
Well, there's Lyft, there's Uber, and you let the citizens decide. The worst fiasco this city ever did was Utopia. And I'm the first one that said that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. If we let the citizens vote on it, which we finally did, and whether or not we're going to start using property tax to pay the bond, what's wrong with letting citizens vote on it? How come we have to have this smart brain trust that thinks they represent the city and how they're going to handle their problems? If you've got a plan, why is it that they would say we're going to put bus rapid transit and not let us vote over here, and then they say we're going to have bus rapid transit here? Maybe the citizens don't want that. And maybe they don't want 9,400 new apartments, 4 to 6 story buildings like these subsidized. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to subsidize it. And the citizens' property taxes are going to drop. There's a 3-page financial implementation plan. It was also voted on in 2015. It's going to lower these taxes. That's how they're going to do it for those businesses.
So again, on transportation, we need to look at ways for mass transit. We need to look at ways of using our roads to a greater extent, more traffic going down our roads. We need to look at stoplights. We need to look at restriping. We need to look at moving traffic to roads parallel to the main roads. And all of those things will help, and this is something that we need to work on. With regards to bus rapid transit, the latest referendum that occurred in Provo and in Orem, votes were taken to do a referendum against an action that the city councils took to put in an interlocal government agency to oversee the construction of the BRT and also leasing of some ground within inside the cities, a small amount. Both of those actions were administrative in nature. The 4th District Court held up both in Provo and in Orem that they were administrative in nature and not legislative, and it was illegal to do a referendum on them, and the referendum was not allowed because it was illegal.
Where do you see the future of Utah Lake and it becoming a tourist destination?
Well, I don't know whether you realize it, but back in the early 1900s, Utah Lake produced a Utah Lake rainbow trout. Only one in the nation was right here. We had a cannery over in Pleasant Grove, and it used to can trout from that lake, and it used to ship it nationwide. That cannery was destroyed by lightning in 1938, and since that time the lake actually has gone downhill. Downhill for a couple of reasons. Carp was introduced to the lake back in the late 1800s. The carp is actually causing a huge problem, and they're taking the carp out of the lake. The other thing is we're trying to limit the amount of phosphorus coming in from water treatment plants into the lake, which produces growth in the lake, and that will help. I also think that the lake ought to be looked at for areas that we could dredge the lake. The lake's a beautiful resource. It's one we could get back. The Utah Lake Commission is working hard, and I believe that we can make, and we are making progress on it.
I used to ice skate on the lake when I was a kid. Used to hike down there when you could go all the way down, even before the freeway was in. But I've not really thought about making that a tourist place. My answer to making it a tourist place, though, is you open it up to the private enterprise and let them look at it and let them spend their money on it if they think it's possible. I don't think the city council will promote that. I don't think the state of Utah will promote that. A good friend of mine was trying to develop a bay down here below Linden, and he spent a lot of money. First name's Norm, won't give his last name. But he spent a lot of money, and the state came in and kept pushing up the spending of state funds over at the boat harbor. And so pretty soon, private enterprise got pushed out, and he closed it down. Let private enterprise do it. Keep the government out of it.
One more question for the mayors, and then we're going to give them 90 seconds to kind of do any summary. 90 minutes, will be here all night, actually, so not 90 minutes. How would you get the public excited about your vision of the expansion of Orem?
Well, one of the reasons I'm running is that I think if they knew what is planned for them, I would win. And I don't know how to get that message out there. I looked at the financial contributions. Who gave the most money to Mayor Brunst? Well, the BRT contractor. Who gave the next most money to the mayor? The people he voted for a subsidy, the mall. And they gave $1,000 apiece to the incumbents. Kind of a thank you for giving us a $58 million tax reduction. If we have all this growth, why do you hand out $58 million to the wealthiest landlord in the city? Last campaign, they put over $13,000 in, getting ready to vote on that subsidy. Then they put in more money. They sent out a flyer to the whole city saying thank you for the subsidy.
So Orem for the future can be a wonderful and a great place, and I believe that we're building towards that. We've put in master plans for sewer, water, for traffic. We're looking at master plans for State Street. We're putting in mass transit. Our community is growing and expanding. As you just heard, 182 new businesses in Orem. When you talk to people, they want to come here. It's interesting that a lot of business publications across the nation are saying, how is it that you're doing what you're doing? How are you accomplishing this? And with that growth, we're seeing jobs for our children. We're seeing opportunities for new businesses to develop and to grow. And the future, to me, in Orem looks bright, where 4 years ago it did not look bright. A lot's been done, a lot's been accomplished. It's interesting, 4 years ago when I was talking about the mall, I said, you know, even McDonald's down across from the city center is going to get busier with what's going on and what's planned for the future. And sure enough, they built a brand new facility that handles twice as many people.
So again, 90 seconds to kind of make any closing statements you'd like to make.
Well, as I've stated before, I hope you go to my website, because I developed these ideas I've tried to put out to you much more on my website. It's called Fire For, Hire For. Fire the 4 incumbents, hire 4 new people, because I don't like the direction they're going in. They're doing it with subsidies. If you read this, and you read their implementation plan, 12 times it mentions CDAs, which is going to raise your taxes as it lowers the incumbents. They say 40 years you're going to make money. Well, you're going to give them 75% of your money away, or 68% of it, to the mall's property taxes for 20 years. Why do you give the wealthiest guy in the city a subsidy? Why do you do that? It's wrong. It's wrong. Let me give you another reference to the Republican Party platform. When government uses taxpayer funding and resources to give special advantages, and that is the Orem City Council, again and again and again, to private companies, it distorts the free market and leads to economic stagnation. That's the Republican Party platform. The Democratic one's just the opposite. The reason they talk about crony capitalism and corporate welfare is, you go back and read that, it talks about the Democratic Party first. It says they're going to try and get away from that. Well, the Democratic Party and the Orem City Council are side by side, walking right down the subsidy road.
So if you look at where we were 4 years ago and you look at where we are today, it's exciting to see what's going on. It's exciting to see the growth. It's exciting to see the new businesses. It's exciting to see what's taking place in Orem. That's what we want for the future. We want to move forward. We want to make it a great place for our children and grandchildren to live. One thing that we did as a city council, we have voted against high-density housing within neighborhoods. We've done that many times. We've also put together a plan for our neighborhoods to protect our neighborhoods for the future. We want to keep our neighborhoods in good condition for the families that live there. But we also want to have a university where they can get an education. We want to have housing that they can live in. We want to have businesses where they can get jobs. And that's what's occurring within our community right now. If you look at what was proposed 4 years ago by my opponent, you would see that it would have led to stagnation. It would have led to problems. You would not see the city you see here today. And to be honest with you, I hear the word subsidy used 100 times. What we're talking about with the mall, again, is a post-performance tax incentive, vastly different. We have various incentives within the community. This incentive was voted on by the governor and the state legislature. Just to let you know, Provo is putting one in. Lehigh has one. Many businesses are using those. These tax incentives are excellent, and they're helping move the business community forward. You know, it's kind of a little bit like taking corn that you raise and then keeping some out for the future and building twice as and planting twice as much.
Please join me in thanking these two for their participation in the meeting.